The Armory Show was a massive event, incredibly important to understanding American contemporary art. Perhaps no single event marked as important a moment in America's avant-garde awakening as the International Exhibition of Modern Art, held in New York's 69th Regiment Armory in 1913. The Armory Show polarized the American public and started what would be a long and loud battle between people who claimed to be champions of the most excellent and advanced artistic ideas and others who thought that those people were obviously painfully full of it. Now, let's give you a little bit of background. In the 18th and 19th century, American artists, and artists overall, at least until we get to the avant-garde in Europe, were trained in academies in which idealistic realism reigned supreme. Many European artists of the mid-1800s, as we've seen, rebelled against academic art. But in America, the turn of the century academic styles and modes of exhibition were still strong. So in 1911, 4 young artists who were fed up with the Academy began meeting at the Madison Gallery in New York to discuss new strategies for exhibiting art in the United States. The group eventually gives birth to the Association of American Painters and Sculptors, composed of young anti-Academy artists. You should see a parallel here. This is very similar to what happens with the birth of Impressionism. In 1913, this group will organize the Armory Show. By this time, the purview of the AAPS had expanded to include bringing the newest European art to American audiences. The members of the association felt it was time for the American people to have the opportunity to see and judge for themselves concerning the work of Europeans who are creating this new avant-garde art. So you can only imagine the kind of reactions that we see. So let's look at what the Armory Show is. On display at the Armory Show were more than 1,200 works of art by more than 300 artists from the United States as well as abroad. Many of these include newly minted masters such as Cézanne, Van Gogh, and Gauguin, who were well represented. Contemporary avant-garde movements got the most attention. It was a disorienting intensity and spatial decomposition found in Cubism that was the talk of the town. One of the pieces in particular became almost synonymous with the show, with sort of the feeling of the show, and that would be Nude Descending a Staircase No. 2 by Marcel Duchamp. Now, with all of this in mind, why is any of this of importance? Well, this is the introduction of modern art to an American audience, a generally conservative American audience. The impact of the Armory Show shattered this even complacency of American art and catapulted out into public view. And what the public saw was a new art which shocked rather than lulled. Overnight, the United States became a market for modern art. The Armory Show was intended to shake American art out of its lethargy, to revitalize it, to make new opportunities for the artists, and to interest collectors in contemporary art. Of course, that element is going to be key. Among its lasting impressions was the direct influence the show had on the eventual decision to establish the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So, when we look at the show, the most important aspect of the show is not talking to the American people. The American people are not the ones buying the art. Your average working class family is not buying the newest and greatest art. It's talking to the patrons, Stieglitz and others. Now, some of these people had already been championing this avant-garde style, Stieglitz being one of them to some degree. We also see others. We see artists creating avant-garde work. The problem is, if no one's going to buy it, I'm not going to keep making it. So, by talking directly to the patrons via the Armory Show, what they do is they encourage the patrons to go out and commission new work. By commissioning new work, you are encouraging the American artist to start playing in the avant-garde, start creating new forms and new styles. And that's the key to the Armory Show. Bringing this new avant-garde European work to American shores, where American patrons will see it, be impressed by it, and begin to commission and purchase similar avant-garde art from American artists, thus creating an American avant-garde.